The question is, the motion be agreed to. I call them in for a ride.
Well, thank you, Speaker. I appreciate you giving me the call, and I want to thank the member for Albury for bringing this outstanding motion. And before I go into the substance of the motion, I want to reflect on the 15 or 20-minute diatribe before this motion came about, where we were lectured by members complaining that they've walked out on frontline workers. Well, I note those same members have walked out on one of the most vulnerable cohorts that are here in this great state, and that is, of course, children and their parents. And I say to those members, why do you hate children? Why do you hate their parents? This is an opportunity to support them, and you have walked out, and I find that disgraceful.
Walked away.
I thank the member for Albury for talking about heart, because that is what is missing with this government's agenda. Oh, I see the Whip's joined us because he can't find anybody else out there, so he's had to come in and defend the team on their own. So he's got no reform ideas of his own, but he wants to come in here and lecture us who are putting forward ideas from opposition. A good idea for him. Now, let me tell you a little bit about these vouchers. 3.5 million odd vouchers redeemed in that last year. An extraordinary contribution to families who we know are struggling with the cost of living right here in this state. But that's not something that those opposite want to talk about, despite the Premier seemingly being of the view that they would be rolled over and continued in his term. Now, those opposite talk about the budget and it only being a one-year plan. But let me say that when you come into government, all of a sudden you become responsible for something. It's this thing called the budget, and you are indeed able to appropriate funds for programs that the Premier himself believed was worthwhile. So where was that funding? Where was the funding to continue the voucher programs for vulnerable children and their families who are struggling with the cost of living? I take the interjection, they are indeed missing. When I was first elected, I spoke about the elegance of vouchers as a policy approach, because whereas government often gets in the way when it tries to provide social support, support to the vulnerable, vouchers are an elegant, targeted and trackable way of assessing the ability of your policy to make a difference. And that's why they have been lauded not just in the Northern Territory, as the member for Albury said earlier, but indeed around the world. Vouchers are now something that countries in other jurisdictions look to New South Wales for leadership on, and this government is lacking that leadership. So these vouchers allowed people to school supplies for children. What is wrong with that? What is wrong with helping people that are struggling to put petrol in the car, keep the lights on, to take a little bit of pressure off at that expensive time of year? Well, the question is that they have overpromised, they are unable to afford, they have under-delivered, as the member for Davidson says, and are unable to continue with these sorts of services. Now, I speak about this in the context of education, but we know it's not just back to school vouchers that were cut. We also know that they've cut other important services like Active Kids, like Creative Kids, and importantly First Lap vouchers, which were designed to help children learn how to swim. And with such an enormous proportion of our community living in coastal areas, what could be more important than teaching children how to swim? But well, that's right. There's a prioritisation of cage fight. And that's what I think, Mr Speaker, this all comes down to, is prioritisation. Whereas you could prioritise an entire generation of children who could go up to be the thought, academic, media leaders of the future, what we've done is disadvantage them in favour of their priorities, things like cage fighting. I think that goes very much to heart. I think that goes very much to compassion or lack thereof, and a lack of prioritisation and vision. And that is why I stand here proudly supporting the member for Albury and his motion, and urge this government to reconsider their approach, because vouchers we know work, we know they are targeted, and we know we can track them. That is good public policy, and it is a shame that you have cut them.
The question is,